Good morning, everyone. I'm going to invite Supervisor Solis to the podium.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's great to be here, and what a beautiful springboard for all of us, so to speak. And welcome to Los Angeles and to the governor. I can't just continue to sing your praises and your leadership and your boldness to bring us here to this date, and how hard you have worked on this issue of helping to reform our behavioral health care system and helping to provide assistance and connecting all those services to the homeless, especially here in Los Angeles, where we are at the epicenter. Over, on any given night, close to 80,000 perhaps homeless. On Skid Row, over 4,500. These are all places that we know well. And every day you just walk around Los Angeles, particularly the city of LA and other parts, and you'll see the plight that many people are facing, and it just has to stop. And we know that this measure, Prop 1, is going to help us do some remarkable things, help to expand that safety net, but also provide case management to those people that are in crisis and suffering now. With the passage of Prop 1, we'll overcome decades of underinvestment in a functioning behavioral health care system of care that has, in my opinion, failed us. I applaud the governor, Gavin Newsom's leadership to take this crisis head on, and I want to thank him for partnering especially with LA County, Los Angeles County, which is one of the largest counties in the country. And he knows where the need is. I know that. He's traveled all over the state, but I know that his heart also, while he's from San Francisco, his heart is here in LA as well. And we applaud him. I remember a few months ago, I joined Governor Newsom at a bill signing event for Prop 1 at the iconic General Hospital. And I'm reminded of how we are looking at reimagining that hospital, hopefully to build up over 700 to 1,000 units of housing on that campus, and providing case management and assistance to people who are coming out of the streets and even out of our carceral system. So all those things, coupled with the work that the governor has done, the legislature, and everyone else, is going to help improve the lives and quality of life for those people that are seeking assistance now. So just keep an open mind. You're going to see some progress being made readily, and I'm very happy to be a part of it and to join the governor. Brevemente en español, buenos días a todos. Gracias al gobernador Newsom y todos los que están aquí presentes para sus esfuerzos para enfrentar nuestra crisis del cuidado de salud mental. El gobernador ha trabajado tan duro aquí también en el condado de Los Ángeles para hacer los necesarios recursos que esta proposición nos va a traer. Por ejemplo, más acceso al cuidado médico, tratamientos de abuso de drogas y ayuda de la crisis salud mental. Personas sin hogar van a tener viviendas y recibir ayuda que merecen. La proposición 1 apoya a nuestros trabajadores también, que les va a dar amplia oportunidad a entrenamiento, y también se va a ver en unos años, espero, en el Hospital General de Los Ángeles, donde vamos a introducir casi 1,000 viviendas para personas que viven en la calle en este momento. Con eso quiero decir que estoy muy agradecida a estar aquí hoy día con el gobernador, and I just want to say thank you again, Governor, and to the team and everybody that made this happen, because it does take larger than a village, in my opinion, to get this going. So next, I'm very pleased to invite Dr. Tanya Spiritos, President of the California Medical Association. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And a special thank you to Governor Newsom and the voting public for the passage of Prop 1. As president of the California Medical Association, I represent 50,000 physicians who understand the importance and urgency of expanding the provision of mental health prevention and treatment services to our population. It has been painful for all of us to witness the suffering and illness, especially in our youth, and not have the means and tools to make a difference in their lives. It is heartbreaking to witness children fall through the cracks of our system of care, develop substance use disorders, and risk homelessness or eventual overdose. Prop 1 will provide structure and funding for critical early diagnosis and wraparound programs to give children the support they need to get in front of these issues. Prop 1 will ensure there is funding to train and educate more mental health professionals so that not only our children, but our adults can be heard and get the help they need when and where they need it. The California Medical Association pledges to work closely and diligently with the governor and state agencies to realize our goal of improved mental health for all our people. It is now my pleasure to introduce Brian Rice, President of the California Professional Firefighters.
Good afternoon, good morning. My name is Brian Rice. I'm the President of the California Professional Firefighters. I have the privilege of representing 35,000 professional firefighters in the state of California, including our local right here, Local 112, the United Firefighters of Los Angeles. And first and foremost, I want to thank the voters of California. This reform of the Mental Health Services Act of 2004 is long needed. Secondly, I want to thank our governor, Gavin Newsom, for the vision and the willingness to take on this problem. This is not his problem. This is not the last governor's problem. This goes back for many, many years. And as we've heard our governor speak about it, I've been asked as a firefighter, why are firefighters engaged so deeply in Proposition 1? And I will tell you that firefighters and police officers, we are the front line of crisis services in our cities. And more than you realize, a firefighter is an advocate. And it can be an advocate for anyone, including members of our homeless community and men and women that are in the throes of crisis mental illness. It is our job now as firefighters to continue this partnership with this team that has been put together, being led by our governor. I see our role as firefighters now is our advocacy begins now. The tools are going to be put in place, and we as firefighters need to double down in our communities. We need to hold the system, meaning counties and Health and Human Services, accountable so that the men and women that we serve on the street, that we don't have the ability to get them to treatment, that treatment is going to be happening. It's not going to be tents and it's not going to be jail cells. It's going to be real treatment for Californians that are suffering. The job starts now for each and every one of us. And my charge to the firefighters that I lead in the state is going to be exactly that. We are the advocates to make this system work. If you live in the state of California, don't just drive by the people you see laid out on the sidewalk or on the street or call on your cell phone. Get services out to help them. It can be county services. If you're unsure, sometimes it's a 911 call. Some of my colleagues won't be real happy about me saying that. But the bottom line is we're community servants. And if you haven't noticed it, we have a true crisis in our state, in every single city. And I'm going to close with this. Governor Newsom, it's easy to lead when times are good and things are easy. The real leaders show up when it's not easy, when the issue is dirty, when the issue smells, when the issue is sick, and when the issue is nobody wants to deal with it. That's when a true leader emerges. And I'm thankful, Governor. You've done the right thing, Assemblymember Irwin, this entire team. I can't thank everybody enough. And just for the firefighters to be a small part of this team, we are going to make a difference. And we have to do it together. So with that, I'd like to introduce James Espinosa, the CEO of the Veteran Mentor Project. James.
Hello, hello. All right, I got my notes on my phone here. All right, so friends, Romans, and countrymen. Just kidding. Always wanted to say that. So first and foremost, I'd like to thank God for this beautiful day he has made. And I want to share something with you. So you know my daughter just last night, who just turned 18, shared with me that she doesn't feel safe walking around on the streets. And this is a relatively safe community. So in the past, the state of California has voted with AB 109, Prop 47, Prop 57 to change laws that reduce sentencing and even treat some crimes as addiction or illness, which is an issue, and just like my predecessor here spoke of, it's a problem for law enforcement and for fire. I am a career law enforcement officer. I've been 20 years in the law enforcement and 6 years in the military. I am actually retiring today, so who gets to announce on national television they're retiring? So with Proposition 1 does not only change things for veterans, it changed things for the entire community, so our kids can walk safer on the streets that they are now becoming afraid of. I'd like to thank Governor Newsom, Jackie Irwin, and all distinguished guests for allowing me to impart my words on this historic event. This is a historic day, make no mistake. Proposition 1 is and should be a nonpartisan and bipartisan issue. I'm thankful for Jackie Irwin for asking me to become involved in this campaign and advocate for yes on Prop 1. As a U.S. Army veteran and a soon-to-be retired first responder, I have seen the mental health crisis in California up close. I also have lived experience with a family member who was homeless when I was a youth. I'm also a suicide loss survivor. I lost my older brother to veteran suicide. He was a retired Army officer. He was a California native. He was a state championship athlete and a West Point graduate. He spent 25 years of his life serving, and only lost his own life due to his unknown mental health issue. I did not know. So with that said, this bill creates funding for new mental health professionals. It carves out $1 billion, $1 billion with a B, for military veterans in California to address homelessness, addiction, and mental illness. If you're not angry about the suicide epidemic in our country, not only among veterans, but among our citizens, you better get angry. You better do something about it. I implore you to take action. I implore you to get behind this solution, this Prop 1 solution to help address this issue. Trust me, because if it were you, or if it were your family member who was on the streets, ill, suffering from mental illness or addiction, you would want a solution to this epidemic. Thank you, California, the state of California, for passing this very necessary proposition. And thank you to the authors of the proposition. Thank you to the governor for putting this proposition out to vote for the people of the state of California. And thank you. That's my closing statement. I would like to introduce Los Angeles County Sheriff Robert G. Luna.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for being here covering. I want to start off by thanking Mr. Espinoza for his years of service. And we say that sometimes we don't think about what that means. He just described it specifically with the loss of his brother, and I'm very sorry about your brother paying that price. I do want to start off by thanking all of you for covering this story. There's a common theme. The leadership, the coalition that you see behind me got this done. We got it over the line. I was very proud to be a big part of it. So I do want to thank the governor and everybody else that was involved for your leadership, your compassion, and your willingness to change the status quo. And that's what this was about. We could not have continued down the same path that we were going down. And I'm going to talk to you from a police officer or deputy sheriff's perspective. With the voters approving this, really what they're doing is they're voting for more alternatives and better solutions for our deputies, police officers, and as you heard earlier, our firefighter paramedics, for better alternatives and options in how we respond to people on a daily basis, 24/7, 365 days a year that are struggling with mental illness and addiction. I believe that this is going to reduce the workload for our deputies and our police officers out in the field, and it's going to ultimately improve the service to our community and, more importantly, get the help to the people that really need it, that unfortunately many people just drive by and say that that's just part of the way it is. It shouldn't be that way. This starts to change that. I also believe this is going to reduce the number of encounters with people in crisis that our law enforcement officers deal with on a daily basis. Sometimes we see, and 99% of the time when our officers, our deputies encounter people, the encounters go great. But we're all familiar with these videos that come out. And typically when you see these tragedies, you go back to the foundation, and it is mental illness. It is addiction. And guess what? This is going to change the way we do things in the future, because we're going to be able to get people help before they commit crimes or worse, hurt other people. That's what this does. On top of that, as the sheriff of Los Angeles County, I believe in the long run, this is going to reduce our jail population, because 42% of the population of our inmates, about 42% of them are mentally ill. I believe these programs will ultimately, down the road, give us better alternatives for people who need treatment and don't need to be in jail. And we are all in support of that. So once again, I really want to make sure that we are here. We did this because of our willingness to help our neighbors. And so, again, thank you to this coalition. It takes a lot of effort to do this, and I am going to introduce the next speaker, and that's Assemblymember Jackie Irwin, who, from the very beginning, you'll hear from her, was dynamite in getting this started. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, and isn't it an incredible day? We have been sitting on pins and needles for the last couple of weeks, and I am so happy that we're all here today to celebrate. I'm Jackie Irwin, the Assembly member representing the 42nd Assembly District, and I was the author of AB 531, which became Proposition 1. I want to start today, as everybody else has, by thanking the governor. A year ago, he and Dr. Galley approached me with an audacious proposal to address the root cause of homelessness, a proposal that addresses mistakes that were made 50 or 60 years ago when mental health hospitals were closed and the community-based care we were promised never materialized. He shared with me his grand vision to address the homeless and mental health crisis that is at the top of everybody's mind in this state. I also want to recognize the other co-author on Proposition 1, Senator Susan Eggman, who couldn't be here, but she has been a champion for mental health during her legislative career. And today, I'm happy to say that we did it. Approval of the $6.38 billion bond that goes hand in hand with Mental Health Services Act reforms will create systematic change for the state of California, including $1 billion specifically for veteran housing. And I'm particularly proud of the focus on veterans. For 7 years, I served as the chair of the Military and Veteran Affairs Committee, working to remove barriers for military service members seeking mental health services. I know firsthand how hard it is for these folks to get the services that they need. Californians can be proud to know that they did the right thing by passing Proposition 1. I think it was closer than we all would have liked, but I think this should motivate us to make sure that these reforms are implemented in a way that can make all Californians proud. And now we need the counties and cities to take the faith that the California voters have bestowed upon them and quickly and responsibly begin implementing these important changes. And as a state, we need to make sure that we listen to and support and not be an impediment to the work that cities and counties need to do. And now it's time for all of us to get to work. Next, I would like to introduce Sacramento Mayor Darrell Steinberg.
Oh, what a happy day. I want to start my remarks today by talking about baseball. Yes, I do. It's opening day has already come, at least in Korea, and will soon come in California. And I was thinking about, in California, about how the Dodgers and the Giants, have to do both now, have won multiple World Series over the course of the decades. And some of those victories have been series sweeps. And some of them have been 7-game nail biters. And you know what they called each of those teams after each of those victories? Winners. World champions and winners. That's Prop 1. We're winners. More importantly, the people are winners. Because what California just did was historic. I'm the mayor of Sacramento, and I served in the legislature for 14 years. And I was privileged to be the original author of the California Mental Health Services Act back in 2004. This is about an arc of history, and I know the governor has talked about it. Assemblymember Irwin, thank you so much for your leadership, as well as Susan Eggman's and all the coalition partners, have talked about the arc of history, how we made promises throughout California history to help people living with brain-based illnesses to live better lives, to live independently and with dignity in our communities, and how over the course of many decades, despite heroic efforts from many, we largely failed them. And back in my era, we were able to pass a series of bills and then the original Prop 63 initiative. And frankly, we kind of did it with little fanfare and without a lot of people paying much attention. Certainly, despite my privilege of working with a number of really good California governors, no governor of California would ever think about improving the state's mental health system as a signature state priority. What are you talking about? That's not good politics. That's not something the people care about. Well, 20 years ago, the people cared deeply about it. It's just that the politicians, especially the leaders who had the biggest voices, didn't quite grasp it. Because back then and today, this issue is not just about the most visible manifestation of untreated mental illness, our homeless mentally ill. It's really about all of us. It's about all of our families. It's about people we work with. And thank God today that people are coming out of their closets and talking about it, because that's part of what changes society. But there's something else that changes society. When the state's top leader, who is a national leader, decides to make mental and behavioral health his signature priority, history then is possible. I've said it to him before, and I want to say it again. 20 years ago, I never could have dreamed that a governor of the state of California would take this kind of initiative to the ballot on top of 5 years of billions of dollars worth of investment and brave and courageous policy change that has questioned a lot of the conventional wisdom. But that's who we have in Governor Gavin Newsom. We may not ever fulfill that promise 100%, but we better keep trying. And his leadership and Proposition 1 is going to get us that much closer. Homelessness need not be hopelessness. Living with mental illness need not be a life sentence of disconnection, unemployment, jail, and early death. No more. Jackie Irwin is right. The hard work is ahead of us because implementation is everything. And yet, it is so important to take this moment with a full heart and with great gratitude to say thank you to everyone who made this happen, and especially my friend, the great governor of the state of California, Gavin Newsom. There you go.
Love that, Daryl. And we didn't even know you were going to make it. Unbelievable. What I would have done without you. What all of us would have done without Daryl Steinberg. We wouldn't be here without him and his legacy and the journey that we're all on together as a consequence of his leadership some 20 years ago. Of course, that leadership was at a time where many of the challenges we face today hadn't fully manifested, hadn't fully formed. And we, frankly, didn't have a fuller understanding of how to address many of the vexing issues that we now do today. And so we're here to modernize the Mental Health Services Act. We're here to modernize our thinking. We're here today celebrating this journey and this successful effort to fundamentally reshape and reform the approach we take to address the issue of mental health and substance abuse and disorder and challenges that continue to vex us out on the streets and sidewalks and those that are suffering alone. If there's ever been a unity agenda, it's this. If there's ever been a coalition that is more diverse and broad, I don't know of it, but this stands tall and unique. Firefighters and vets, folks from every political walk of life, 40-0 in the state Senate. Republicans, Democrats, recognizing the urgency of the moment and the imperative to move forward to fundamentally reform our system and move in a different direction. A broad coalition that we brought to the voters of the state of California, but we recognize and clearly, soberly, we're reconciling the fact change has its enemies. Change is tough. Change is hard. And so these have been a few long weeks, sleepless weeks. And, you know, just reminded what Father Cos taught me, God's delays are not God's denials. This 2 weeks, means nothing when you look back. So this is, as was stated, an historic day. And that means little if we can't deliver now on the promise. I say this all the time, program passing is not problem solving. And I think that's reflected perhaps in the results. People clearly recognize the urgency of the crisis at hand. You randomly walk the streets anywhere in the state of California, rural California, northern, coastal, wherever you are, ask them what the top few issues are in the state of California, and everybody would not be surprised to hear it's housing, cost of living, affordability, issues related to homelessness, and all of the challenges that we're experiencing out on the streets and sidewalk. Doesn't matter where you go, Modoc, Lassen, no matter if you're down in Imperial County, let alone here in Ventura or San Diego, Orange County, or in Los Angeles or any other part of Northern California. This is universal. The challenge is, what do you do about it? And that's what we've challenged ourselves with in terms of the last number of years, to look at new strategies, new reforms, to look under the hood and frankly, take a little reflective look at our own performance and our own behavior. And we acknowledge that things needed to fundamentally change. This is the 5-year process that began literally when I had the privilege of getting sworn in as governor. And one of my first meetings was with Darrell Steinberg. And I said, Darrell, what can we do together to build a coalition to reform this remarkable initiative and then build on it, because we have to scale our solutions. This has been a 5-year process to build around this initiative. And over the course of that process, we built this remarkable partnership. Every single person here, from labor leaders to folks that have been in the trenches, the doctors and the nurses, the folks on the front lines, folks running clinics, folks advancing new ideas and strategies and solutions, all of them came together and offered advice and counsel. And we incorporated their strategies, we incorporated their concerns. But one thing that was overriding, and Assemblywoman Irwin made that point so beautifully, and that is people want accountability. People want results. People are exhausted with the time delay. They're exhausted with the promotion. They're exhausted with the promises. They want to see results. They want to see programs stood up. They want them done cost efficiently. They want them done in a way that actually produces outcomes. And I hear you loudly and clearly. And what I would say about Proposition 1 is you will be proud. That's exactly what this initiative brings. Fundamental reforms. It requires now, for the first time in state's history, that counties have one single plan. One single plan to address this issue. And it's not just a plan, it's with real oversight to deliver on the plan, real consequences if you don't deliver on the plan. And it's not just the Mental Health Services Act funding, it's all funding sources. It requires now a continuity of not just consideration of care and accountability. There's now new auditing oversight. There's new oversight from the state of California. We are tightening up the accountability, and we're tightening up our own responsibility to produce results. And we're holding all of us at all levels of government to a different level of expectation. On the bond itself, this is not your mom and dad's old bond. This fundamentally reforms the way we do bonds. I get why people said, I'm not going to support another bond. Well, this isn't another kind of bond. Those folks that weren't with us, you're going to be impressed. We're actually reforming the bond process where things took 2+ years. The last time you had a bond in this related effort, it took over 2 years for the money to start going out. We're going to start putting out notices for funding availability in just a matter of months. The first ones come out in October. That's unprecedented in California history because we have seeker reforms and land use reforms that are part of this. So, all these things are incredibly important, and they're points of principle and points of pride and points of this collective reform effort. And so I said this when we launched this thing. I said I've never been associated with anything I could be more proud of. And now we're here on the other side of it, having successfully achieved this remarkable results because of the graciousness and the generosity of the people of the state of California. And so I will end, as others had begun, by thanking all of you that supported this initiative. And for those that didn't, my job is to do the job you sent us here to do, to produce results, and not to assert, but to advance the kinds of reforms and ultimately outcomes that you deserve. I'll close, though, with this final point. We are here emphasizing a point at the Reagan State Building. It's not without consideration. You know, former governor, his office just right here, in 1967 launched many of the reforms that led to the conditions that we're experiencing here today. Lantern Perpetuum Short Act in 1967, efforts around deinstitutionalization, some were overwhelmingly supported, bipartisan, they weren't just partisan efforts, led to a reduction from 37,000 psychiatric beds in the state of California to today, roughly 5,500. 37,000 to 5,500 today. They advanced a vision, but they never fulfilled the vision of creating the alternative system that ultimately would support community efforts. This is the fulfillment of the promotion and promises that were made a half century ago. So it is a deeply, it's principled that we're here. That's the year I was born. And to be here now as governor, and to be able to actually lay out the strategy and the funding and the support to actually deliver this, again, reinforces my earlier statement. I've never been associated with something I'm more proud of. And I recognize now the imperative of delivering on this vision. And so that's why we've already stood up a strike team. That's why we already are blowing up all the boxes in terms of how we deliver. And that's why we have expressed our gratitude and support for our city leaders and county leaders. Sheriff and others have said it more. But now we expect you to be full partners in this process. State vision is realized locally. And it is foundational, if this is going to work, that everybody step up their game. And I assure you, if you want a preview, it's now about accountability at the local level. Cities and counties need to step up. This state, through the generosity, spirit, and support of Californians, have done more now in this space than any time in our history. And now we need to see the cities and counties be full partners and participants in advancing this effort. And so I appreciate very much the supervisor for being here and her leadership. I appreciate Jackie Irwin for her leadership and her support of vets. And I appreciate your brother, James, not dissimilar to my grandfather, spent years in Corregidor and prisoner of war, came back a different guy, and ultimately took his life as well. And so the spirit of Arthur Menzies, I'm here as well, and the spirit that I think unites all of us here in California. So with that, we're here to answer any questions.
Hi there, Governor. Alex Michelson, Fox 11 News. A win is a win, and congratulations on that.
I like the baseball fan.
Yeah. Still the world champions, I guess. But you all spent $16 million on this. The opposition spent $1,000.
Yeah.
Clearly, many voters were sending a message with their opposition to this.
Yeah.
What do you think the message they were sending is? What does that say about their trust in government, and how do you think about that message as you now implement this?
Well, I think we now unpack everything we had included in this initiative, which is a recognition of the cynicism that's out there that that, just spending more money somehow is going to solve a problem. I share that cynicism. That's why this reform is a completely different dynamic, and we need to advance that dynamic and put it into play, and we need to prove ourselves, not just assert ourselves. And so I recognize that. I also recognize, again, the turnout was a lot different and lower than we had expected. That's not an excuse. Also recognize the Affordable Care Act passed by one vote. A few of us discussed that and how transformative that's been in the lives of hundreds of millions. And my intention is to make this effort equivalent in terms of that kind of transformation.
Were you surprised it was as close as it was?
Well, I mean, obviously, a little bit. But, you saw me out there, 20 cities in the last 6 days. I still haven't recovered my voice. We didn't take anything for granted. Bipartisan support. We had incredible leadership. Sheriff Luna just stepping up in a big way. You saw all those commercials. Law enforcement, the vets community. We took nothing for granted. I mean, the reason we raised that kind of money, despite that opposition, we knew this was going to be tough. Back to Daryl's point, I mean, this is, change is hard, particularly in this space. And we also did it on a March ballot, which is rare for these bonds, because we have a sense of urgency. I got a sell-by date. I get it. But I've got 3 more years here, roughly, to prove that we can make a dent in this. And again, it's not just the chronic adults out there on the streets and sidewalks that are self-medicating or drug or alcohol addictions. It's those folks suffering alone. This is for you. This is for your kids. This may quite literally be for you or your loved ones. We've never had these resources. We're answering that call of concern to address the magnitude and scale of the concern out there.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, Max Adler, Bloomberg News. I was wondering, do you know what the state's current borrowing capacity is? And did this tight vote change your calculation for what bond measures will be on the November ballot? Just how pervasive is spending fatigue amongst the electorate?
No, it's a good question. So there are a number of other considerations, as you know, have been discussed and you've reported as it relates to potential bonds for schools, school facilities, ideas around affordable housing and the like. And those are being discussed in real time with the legislature. The bonding capacity, depending now, we'll get the latest numbers. There's been some fluctuation in terms of the analysis in that 20-ish billion range, plus or minus. And so there's still certain capacity, and we'll make a determination as we process. But this doesn't fundamentally change that dynamic. It's a different electorate in November. We have different needs in different categories that have different levels of support and considerations. So we'll have to adjust, not our thinking, but adjust to those considerations as we make a determination together over the course of the next few months. One thing I am grateful for, though, is the announcement we made yesterday with legislative leaders, the urgency to which they're focusing on this budget shortfall, and the fact we're moving with early action is significant. And I'm very grateful for that leadership. It's demonstrable in terms of that announcement. And so we're going to be moving very quickly to address those shortfalls in a matter of weeks. And I'm encouraged as well by recent revenue numbers coming in. You're seeing economic energy and output. I was there with NVIDIA yesterday, and they're remarkable. What they referred to as the Woodstock for semiconductors and AI industry, a different level of energy, the likes of which is almost reminiscent only to early 2000s when we were there with Steve Jobs in San Francisco at the Moscone Center. I mean, this state is buzzing. There's something happening, and it's very exciting and encouraging. And so in terms of direction, I'm very confident in our ability to provide support for those other efforts as well.
So ultimately, you think the tight vote was the result of lower turnout and not a fundamental shift in voter sentiment?
Well, again, this is a reform of the Mental Health Services Act. I'll remind everybody what this does. This redirects billions of dollars with new priorities, new expectations, new strategies. It wasn't just a bond. Prop 1 was not a bond. Prop 1 was many different things. And so all those things have to be assessed. But we'll make a determination, but nothing is conclusive is the point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Governor. Josh Haskell, ABC 7 Eyewitness News. As we continue to hear this term, the homeless industrial complex, are you surprised at all that voters in this state, people in California, some of them still seem to believe that jails and prisons are the best place for the mentally ill? And I know you continue to fight that. But
Yeah, well, I know. I mean, and some claim to being fiscal conservatives, which is beyond me. The cost of incarceration, being so much higher. And the cost of neglect in terms of the chronic. I mean, you can ask Brian Rice about that. You can ask Sheriff Luna to express that in more nuanced and human details. No, I think we do have to work on that. But I think it's an expression of frustration. Just whatever you can do, just do something. And this is, again, a reminder, and it gives me a segue reminder. We didn't just do this. This is part, I mean, Dr. Galley can talk about that. There's no state in U.S. history, this is objective, and we can back this up, that's now doing more to address the issue of mental health and address the issue of substance abuse disorder in the state of California at a scale. Not just with this reform, but the work we're doing in reforming the Medicaid system, our Medi-Cal system through CalAIM, the integration of brain and physical health, new payment strategies and structures, work we're doing with IST, those that are incompetent stand trial, and huge new investments in that space. The conservatorship reform that they talked about for a half a century that we delivered together with the Assembly. Care Court, completely new pathway and strategy. Now, combined with all of these new resources, we're in a very different place. And so I think that will allow us to move beyond that old binary of incarceration or encampment. And that's what this initiative is all about.
Hi, Governor. I want to ask you about unhoused veterans. There is currently a group of veterans that's suing the VA and HUD because there just isn't enough housing for them. And I wonder, how is this going to address the situation when the federal government is lagging on this issue, and we've got wounded, disabled, homeless veterans living in tiny sheds on the grass at the VA in Westwood?
Yep. Well, we estimate over 10,000 vets on the streets, sidewalks throughout the state of California. And that's exactly why we're so proud of the voters supporting Proposition 1 and providing a pathway for additional $1 billion of investments. But I would be remiss to exclusively answer that question without asking James and Jackie if they wish to respond to that as well, more nuance.
If you look at the voter-approved bonds, VHHP back in 2007, the approval again by voters in 2014 for money for veteran homelessness, you'll see that the voters really support this type of support for our veterans. But veterans are actually the only group that has lowered in the total percentage of homeless on the street, and I think that's because of the investment that California's made since 2008. So we have done a substantial amount, but in no way is it enough. This $1 billion will just continue the work that CalVet has been doing with HCD, and I'm optimistic that will continue to make a dent in that population. That is the population that we have the largest responsibility for.
But I mean, with due respect, we have veterans with missing limbs living on the grass. Right.
So I can't speak to the nuts and bolts of it, but I can speak to the human condition of it. And what I see out there is tragic. And I see that the VA is making an honest effort to try to change these problems. CalVet is making an honest effort to make these problems better, to solve these problems, resolve these problems. I don't know the nuts and bolts and the budgets that go behind it, but having worked the streets and seen numerous homeless folks, especially homeless veterans, those VASH vouchers, organizations like Gold Coast Veterans, they're able to get homeless veterans off the streets. And as far as the nuts and bolts go, for me, with the questions that I do ask that the governor and Jackie also try to address, I see that there's still work to be done, and I don't think that question can be answered today.
There's a billion new reasons to be a little bit more optimistic than we were just yesterday when there was some anxiety in this space.
Hi, Governor. You've already spoken a bit about the close vote, but I'm wondering, do you think your relatively low approval ratings right now, do you think that played into the muted support for the ballot measure?
Well, I'm just proud of the broad support we had across the spectrum. And we talked about across the political spectrum. I joked a little bit that Sheriff Luna was a fixture on your TV, Sheriff Cooper up north. We had other spokespeople all across the state of California, a lot of vets that were out front. So this was a broad coalition.
Governor, good morning. Margaret Carrero, KNX News. Can you speak, because you talked a little bit about the idea of accountability and consequence. Can you speak more specifically about that as it relates to Prop 1 and implementation?
Well, I think it's broader than that, and it's a little bit of preview of things I'll be discussing a lot more. You know, a number of years ago, California moved in a very different direction, radically different direction to address the original sin in this state, and that's the issue of affordability and housing and the housing crisis. As you know, particularly down here, one of the cities that was one of the most egregious remains so is Huntington Beach. And we were not shy in suing the city. We called out 46 other cities, including my old city, San Francisco. We created a new housing accountability unit that quite literally lays out sanctions, tiered sanctions. That's the approach we're going to take now on housing, on homelessness and mental health. We laid out through the process the ongoing funding we provide cities and counties, what we refer to as the HAP process, a requirement for plans. No plan, no money. In the plans, there's 6 specific measurements, and there's a bonus pool that's a component if you reach those metrics. That's a similar approach we're going to take more broadly, and it's the approach that's incorporated already foundationally in Proposition 1. As I referenced now, one single plan for all the funding streams for behavioral health, now a requirement for audits and oversight and new accountability, but we're going to layer on top a preview, a version of what we're doing on housing accountability more broadly in this space.
One more question with regard to Prop 1. Obviously, there was some opposition to this. What do you say to those critics, opponents who say that Prop 1 is going to cut funding to already successful programs?
Well, it's all about prioritization. It's all about making determination. It's all about change. If you support the status quo, then that argument holds a lot of weight. I don't. I don't know many people that do. I don't know anybody that voted against this that support the status quo. I just haven't met them. And so this is a different approach. This is a new strategy change. It's a component part of dozen initiatives that we advance. I didn't even mention all the other work we've done on making eligible all our mobile outreach, $1.4 billion, the workforce investments that are unprecedented in state's history, 0 to 26. I'll remind you, $4.6 billion, almost $4.7 billion of additional new resources to focus on wellness centers and coaches and support for our youth, all part and parcel of this larger mosaic of support. And so, you know, as it relates to those that support the status quo, I say with respect, it's time for change.
Thank you, Governor.
Last question.
Could you talk a little more to how this new funding will assist with the implementation of Care Court, and what would you say to address people's concerns that both Prop 1 and Care Court could be used to compel people into involuntary mental health treatment?
Well, Care Court is not substituted care, it's supported care. So foundationally, its pathway is very different. It has a due process component, it has court oversight, it has support public advocates. And it's a process that unfolded in terms of consensus over the course of a year, working to address those civil liberty concerns. But it is about change, and it is about making change in terms of those that can get help that currently are not getting help. The conservatorship reform even goes further. If there was a criticism or argument, or at least a stated concern that was amplified on Care Court, it was around the imperative of having housing support. Well, Prop 1 just answered that concern fundamentally and foundationally. And so that, I think, only clears the decks, not just on Care Court, but conservatorship. And so the question I'm asking myself, and I'll ask it publicly, and I look forward to getting answered, why is anyone delaying on conservatorship reform? Why is any county delaying on moving on conservatorship reform? People are dying now on our watch. Why are they delaying? Everybody needs to step up. State of California has not been invested in this space for half a century. We've done our job. Now the cities and counties need to step up. Counties need to implement conservatorship. In those counties, thank you to LA, moving in with Care Court and others. I want to see all those other counties. They don't have to wait till the end of the year to enter into Care Court. They have that right, but I want to see those 50 counties that haven't yet move a little more quickly. And so that's the spirit of the moment. Again, not as sparring partners, but as working partners. But again, the urgency that is required at this moment requires us to be a little bit more candid and express ourselves a little bit more publicly the way we've been privately in terms of our expectation setting as it relates to addressing this issue. And so I appreciate very much your question. And I appreciate everybody up here that made this happen. This is one of those classic cases where every single thing we did mattered. And had we not done one of those things, we may not be in this position. And so that's a hell of a thing for all of you to consider your own individual contribution, our collective effort. And so I just thank you for that. But now let's get to work, and I'm looking forward to getting something big done. And thank you to the people of the state of California for advancing this historic effort. Thank you all very, very much.